Today I'm going to ruin two more characters for you. I'll be the first one to say I had a huge crush on Daemon Targaryen, just like Jess, and boy was I wrong. Once your front lobe kicks in, you just see things differently. When I was watching House of the Dragon, I realized that Daemon Targaryen has a historical twin, and it's none other than Prince Philip from The Crown. The similarities between these two are wild. Now, it is partially because Matt Smith plays both characters. He is to blame for the charm and charisma that we find in both these characters. Let's be honest, if it wasn't for him, you'd see these men for how unlikable they really are. Let me explain. The most obvious red flag, the red flag of all red flags, is the grooming. And keeping it in the family too. Yes, the Queen, Elizabeth, and Prince Philip were related, just like Daemon and Rhaenyra are related. But that's not the red flag because most royals were related. That's just how it is. The red flag is the age gap. Now, Daemon is Rhaenyra's uncle, and he was a grown man when she was just a baby. That is just crazy. I don't think I need to explain that. Prince Philip, on the other hand, was 18 when he first met 13-year-old Elizabeth. And yes, that is crazy because we can't focus on a number alone. When you're 50 and you date someone who's 56, 58, it's not the same as when you're 13, which is basically a fetus with homework. Dating someone who's 18 is weird because an 18-year-old can whoa. You get what I'm saying? I just don't understand why an 18-year-old would want to date a 13-year-old. I just don't see it. In the big year of 2025, let's not pretend that men go for little girls because they're so mature or that they look better or whatever nonsense they want you to believe. They go for someone who has no experience in dating or life so that they can position themselves as somewhat of a prize. Because someone who has got experience and has lived life would A, not see them as anything special, and B, would see their exploitation for what it is and nip it in the bud. You see how slightly older Rhaenyra thinks it's pathetic that Daemon's rash actions led to the death of a child, and he's not even disturbed by it, when he, in fact, has kids of his own. See how Philip has endless resources at his disposal, but spends his time drinking and gossiping at clubs where let's be honest, you would never find a royal. And because royals don't associate with people like that. And of course, there will be people who say, it's because he's so lonely. If you're lonely, go do something productive. That does not involve embarrassing your wife, who's also the head of the church, so she cannot divorce you, and I bet she wanted to. Notice when Philip is older, he tells Diana the exact same thing. Don't embarrass the family just because you're lonely. Isn't that interesting? You're telling me that you do understand that what you're doing is wrong, but you only understand when a woman is doing it. When you're doing it, it's fine. It's okay to bully your wife into giving you a title because you're competing with your child for a title. Very interesting. The point is, these men are cropped at an intellectual level. They're frozen in this endless competitive teenager phase, except for it only applies to them. Everyone else is expected to grow up and be an adult about it. It's truly the most despicable thing because we have all seen men like this in real life. Instead of working on themselves and doing something with their lives, they target younger women who have yet to learn what it means to be an adult and why it is so important emotionally to have your own achievements. But these women are not frozen, okay? Why should they be? They have the right to grow up and become their own person. When they do, however, in comes the abuse, which is really just a middle-aged man throwing a tantrum like a toddler. Both Philip and Daemon have this very evil tendency to target anger and frustration onto their wives, which should not be the case in any relationship. But it's very important to point out that in their case, the wife is also the head of the state. She's also the commander of the armed forces. She is the law. Do you see the allure of trying to intimidate the head of state behind closed doors just because in your own life you have no agency? It's almost as if the whole point of marrying these women was to be cruel to them, because that would be the achievement. And it would only work if you married them young, because women your own age would not allow that. Now, think about the scene where Daemon is ordering Rhaenys to get back on her dragon and fly with him to the Red Keep. See how she doesn't even care? Rhaenys is the appropriate age for Daemon. That's how women his age see him. Like someone who's trying too hard. And that brings us to the next similarity, which is power or lack thereof. Rhaenyra is the heir, and so is Elizabeth. There is no question about it. You can't say, oh, I didn't know she was going to be queen. You did. You absolutely did. And both Daemon and Prince Philip are royals, which means that they know what is expected of a queen. Now, tell me why at the coronation he makes a fuss about kneeling before his wife. He had no issues kneeling before her father, and her father is his father-in-law, right? So if relation to the crown made a difference, then why didn't you try to get out of that? You had no problem kneeling before a man. It's only a problem when it's a woman. The woman in question is the child bride you married to program her into thinking she has to embarrass herself to uplift you. In case of Elizabeth's father, he didn't just kneel before him without hesitation. He gave up all his titles. Useless titles, mind you, but titles, because the king said so. If this is not misogyny, I don't know what is. And you have to give him credit where credit is due, because this is not the only time he's tried to change years of tradition by persuading her to lower herself to make him look better. He wanted his kids, the heirs of the British royal family, to have his surname, which is not even his surname, because it's not important to him. If it was so important to him, then why does he not use his own surname? Oh wait, you don't, because it is the surname that represents your lost privilege, your lost prestige, your forfeited positions. And you don't want to have that on your credit when you were out there securing a royal marriage for yourself. But now that the queen has been secured, you want your name to be attached to a crown that you have no right to. It is times like this when a non-monarchist like me is so happy to see the strength of the monarchy and its deep-rooted tradition. Elizabeth had advisors who would not allow her to change her mind, and who tried to get her to understand that her own legacy is so much more important than the whims of an insecure man. But you have to understand that there are a lot of insecure men, and they attach to women who don't have a parliament to advise them against things like this. So you have to look at characters like this and learn to be appalled, not impressed. Daemon takes it a step further. Before Aegon was a threat to Rhaenyra's claim, there was Daemon. We all saw that scene where she comes to ask him for the egg, and we love the chemistry. We forget how strategic it was for her to call him out like that, to ask him publicly to either take her out, because she's the threat, right? So just take her out, and if you can't do that, give it a rest. He didn't kill her, not because he loves her, because he realized that when she was speaking to him in Valyrian, she actually gave him a way out. He could quietly retreat and continue this farce of being a threat to the crown when she and Viserys both know all Daemon wants, all he wants is attention. And this is brilliant. She calls Daemon out on his real problem, which is that he does not want to rule, because that would mean doing the work. He just wants to bully the person who is ruling. Think about it. Aegon came after a series of miscarriages and stillbirth and a dead wife, by the way. And Rhaenyra was not considered a threat because she was a girl. So that means Daemon had more than a decade of zero competition to cement his position as heir, to get involved in strategy and politics. And what did he do? He didn't want none of that. He chose not to. What is the most important responsibility of a king or an heir? Producing another heir. Daemon could not get himself to make an heir, even with his lawful wife, who was rich, by the way. And at that point in time, he was not ready to get rid of her. He was ready to make fun of her for looking worse than a sheep, but not getting rid of her. Why? Because it's no use to him. Because if he got rid of her, then he would have to marry again and make an heir. He cannot get himself to produce an heir. Why? Because that would cement his position as heir to Viserys. And that would mean that Viserys and Emma would just stop stressing out about having a boy and everyone would live happily ever after. And why would they do that? Because they would know that the throne would pass on to Daemon and from Daemon to his dragon-riding kid. He could not make a baby if his life depended on it. This is not natural infertility. It's how much he hates the idea of actually being responsible. Why do you think we got the whole plot of Daemon having technical difficulties in the first season? And Rhaenyra questioning him in Valyrian in front of everyone, saying, really? You're going to have a kid with your second wife? You couldn't even have one with your first. You stole a dragon egg for a boy that we have all been waiting for you to make. Daemon hates responsibility. He just wants to be admired and feared and obsessed over, like a 12-year-old girl. He has no ambition outside of actually stressing Viserys out. That was the whole point of the whole stepstone situation. He risked his life, not because he's brave, because he's quite literally not interested in anything but showing off. He will literally die trying to make Viserys look like the weak and careful king next to his big bad woke prince. And that seems cute on the surface, but if you understand that this is just overcompensation, you realize how insufferable this man is. Which is why he is mad when the war finally breaks out and Rhaenyra is being an adult about it. He's thinking to himself, what do you mean? You're going to put the safety of the kids and the realm before my playtime? As if this is not the whole job description of a queen and a mother. Daemon gets violent with her because he realizes that this girl that he's been grooming since she was a teenager, that he called my queen in front of everyone else, is thinking for herself. That was not the plan. When Rhaenyra asks Daemon to marry him, she knew he would be difficult. But having him as her husband would make him less of a threat. She knew that if she married someone else, he would be out there pulling stunts like the Stepstones throughout her reign. And she realizes that she can't have the Greens and this man-child on her hands. And yes, sometimes the best way to destroy an enemy is to make a friend. In her case, it's a husband. She knew that he was not interested in ruling. He just wanted credit, so she keeps him occupied because that would benefit her. And it's the smart thing to do. It worked for a while. They were happy, but then the Greens happened. Aegon's coronation itself is not such a big threat. But when she lost her son, and she also had a miscarriage, her resolve is challenged. And that makes it harder for her to deal with this man-child, because Daemon is like a toddler that needs constant supervision. Rhaenyra is really pissed when she realizes that he's out here killing kids and destroying her reputation. She is scared because if they answer each dead family member with another dead family member, there would be no Targaryens left, and that is just common sense. But when Daemon is questioned for not only orchestrating an assassination, but also getting it wrong and killing the wrong person and making the situation worse, he is ready to throw it in her face that he is the threat to her position, that she isn't even worthy of being a queen. He should be the king instead. He can't even give clear instructions to Blood and Cheese and make sure that his plan is followed through to a T, but he should be king. That's the problem. He's only interested in helping her so long as she accepts that his playtime is more important than actual semblance of safety for the kids and the realm. That's what insecure men do. They literally go to war to get attention. They know they might die, but it doesn't matter because they don't value safety. They don't value having a home and a family and peace. And nobody ever checks them for it. Daemon is not just ready to go to war, he's ready to go on a side quest in the middle of war that he started that she didn't even want. That's your spoiler warning, by the way. Please click away if you don't want Dance of the Dragon spoilers. In the books, Daemon didn't just initiate a war that Rhaenyra didn't ask for. In her name, he starts an affair with another little girl called Nettles. And when Rhaenyra wanted to stop, because, hello, infidelity, and also we're kind of in the middle of war here, with our kids dropping like flies, that's when Daemon gets pissed and abandons her. And yes, that is when he fights Aemond in the famous Battle above God's Eye. But let's be clear, he's not sacrificing himself for Rhaenyra. It's him realizing, oh well, the war was a shit show, and whoops, I got all the kids and the dragons killed. How can I still make this about me? It's basically Daemon trying to pull off another stunt like the Stepstones because this is his pattern. He knows that he might die, and with him gone, his child would have to see Sunfire munch on his mom. That's fine. That's a price he's willing to pay. For what? For attention. He just needs to have his show-stopping moment. Doesn't matter the cost. And yes, he takes down Rhaegar and Aemond. Give the man his cookie. He earned it. But don't forget, it's not for Rhaenyra, his wife, or his kids. It's to satisfy his bottomless pit of insecurity that only a dragon-riding murder-suicide would satisfy. I don't know how they're gonna go about this in the show because we don't have Nettles, and they decided to give Daemon a spiritual purpose where he now believes in a prophecy that, by the way, he physically abused his wife and mocked Viserys for. Because it's not common sense for a monarch to keep the realm together. There has to be a dark prophecy behind it, right? And it's only believable if all of it revolves around him somehow. Only then can he get it together for once. This man gets on my nerves, if you can't tell. Even if the show doesn't go in the same direction as the books, you know this man's insecure as hell. And they dress it up as bravado and confidence for us. They did the same thing with Philip. They make him look like he was this pillar of strength for Elizabeth, but when I was watching The Crown, I couldn't help but wonder how stressed this woman is because of this man. I hope after watching this, you see Daemon and Philip for what they are. Terrible husbands. And in perpetual competition with their child brides that they chose in the first place. It's not like anyone put a gun to your head and forced you to walk down the aisle. This was your decision.